Thursday to everyone. Glad you could all make it. I'm just seeing so many different familiar and some not familiar faces. You got a lot of Rivco representation for sure. Welcome to those of you from Riverside County, and welcome to those of you from outside our county. I think I saw Brea. I think I saw um, La Habra, I think I saw on there as well, Pomona. So thank you all for joining us. You're all very much welcome. We want to just support school counselors and elementary across our region for sure. So thank you for making it out here. And you could do so many other things with your time. We appreciate you making it to join us today. For those who don't, maybe don't know our work or who I am, I'm Dr. Pedro Caro, and I'm happy to serve Riverside County Office of Education as the College and Career Readiness Coordinator. And a lot of my work is with the school counselors across our county. And so we love to bring you this type of intentional PD to support your needs as school counselors. And so we're just happy that you're here. This is all about you and based on your needs right now. If you recall back, it was 1 year ago, almost to the date that we were working from home and getting set for our new normal, and we pushed on through as only school counselors can. And so I want to just make sure I thank you all and give you just kudos and much respect and admiration for all you've done this past year, adjusting to this new circumstance, very much so. This webinar is absolutely designed to suit your needs. It's something that our counselors really were reaching out for and said that they need this right now. And so that's how we operate at CCR. We make it happen on the spot. And so we hope that this adds value to your work right now as we speak. So take those notes, ask those questions. We are here for you. We also invited administrators to come on out because part of the planning that we're talking about with reentry involves the support of your admin. So for any principals, APs, coordinators, we welcome you as well to this webinar. Before we get started, just a few news and notes that I wanted to get through. Thank you so much. Okay, next slide. Thank you. And there you see our executive director who cannot make it today, but Catalina sends her regards and she'll join us promptly for sure. Just a few housekeeping tools. If you've with us in the past, we try to make sure that we hit on all your needs during our time together, but know that in this recorded session, if there's something we don't get to, or you maybe made it late, or you have to step out for another meeting and come back, all of our recordings are made available to you free of charge, and they will all live at rcec.us. If you're not from Riverside County, basically you make a free account. It's super quick, takes 2 minutes, and then you have access to today's webinar, along with the amount of work we've done in the past year or so for school counselors. This includes our Leadership Network conference we put on a few weeks back, if you were here for that. It includes our webinar series from last spring, where we first got asked to work from home and things like that. So lots of good resources. They're all free. They are all there for you. Zoom Bombers hasn't happened just yet, or knock on wood, it doesn't happen today, but in case it does, we'll just simply reboot, come back on, no problems there. Thank you. Next slide. Okay, next slide. Yes, and of course, always, take my email down if you'd like. We are here to support you. So if there's something you hear today that you want more information of, today was kind of fast, or you want to do a deeper dive, please know that I am always here to help you. Our team is here to help you. We just believe in the work that you do. So definitely reach out so we can support you with those regards as well. Now, before we get into our guest speakers today, I wanted to give you just another tool for your toolkit. It's something that was distributed a few months back, and maybe you've already have it, maybe you don't. So I want to just make sure that you all have access to it. Jamina, can we send this through the chat so that folks can easily download this and have it at their fingertips? Great. And so folks, what you're seeing here is ASCA collaboration with NAS, that's the National Association of School Psychologists, and they put together this really handy toolkit that talks about school reentry considerations. It's pretty comprehensive. I mean, there's stuff there for how to support your staff, how to support your families, how to work with your administrators, developing a plan. I mean, there's just so much stuff. It can be overwhelming in a good way. So I invite you to check that out when you get a chance. And let me just share my screen so that I can walk you through a few things. Can you see, Jamina, can you see my screen now with the reentry?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. Okay, so folks, if you have it at your on your other tab right now, just kind of, I'm not gonna do a big, huge dive for sake of time, but I wanted you to see what it looks like. So it has broken down by different components of the school reentry, what schools and districts should be looking to do. So I know we were not ready for this maybe a few months back, but as schools begin their reentry processes, you take note on what ASCA and what NASP has recommended. Behind each component, you'll see different considerations, and then you'll see pretty handy, easy to download resources that you can use, such as resource mapping, looking at school counseling roles during COVID. The one that I want to kind of just walk you through really quick has to do, and there's stuff for mental health, there's things for wellness, for looking at psychological triage, giving you forms you can use. It's a pretty handy tool. There's one here, I won't click on it for fear that it might take me somewhere else, but school refusal. And that's one thing that counselors have told us about, is they're worried and some kids are coming back and they've been used to being at home for so long that they're just not motivated. They don't want to come back. And so this one right here, this tab, is a great resource that walks you through warning signs of school refusal and things that you can share as school counselors with your staff to give them ideas they can use in the classroom, how to notice it, how to understand where kids are coming from, and then talking points that they can use with their kids. It has scripts they can just use. It has forms they can give to families. It has ways they can just connect with those kids they couldn't before. So definitely check these out when you get a chance. And like I said, it's about 13 pages, just chock full of resources. I hope it's helpful to you. And I wanted to just give you that so that you all have access to this pretty comprehensive document. And so on that note, I want to welcome to our virtual stage and give them ample time two amazing presenters, two amazing folks that are doing great things down in Florida. I'll let them give you their biographies, but I wanted to welcome, you've seen her if you came to our leadership network a few weeks back. She gave a presentation that was around this topic of reentry, and folks were just loving the information she was putting down. So we said, let's invite her back and see if she can really do some deeper dives with our actual school level counselors. So I want to introduce Dr. Sandy Logan McKibben, who's a professor at FIU down in Florida, oversees school counselors and has just a wealth of knowledge around school counseling and what it means to be an amazing school counselor during this time. And she also has an amazing colleague who I got to meet last week that's doing great things for her elementary school. So right there doing the work that you're all doing too. And I'll let Dr. Logan McKibben kind of take it from there. Dr. McKibben, the floor is yours.
Great. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm so excited to be back here. Thank you again for the invitation, Dr. Caro. I love any opportunity to go back, if I can, even if it's virtually, to be back in California. I'm originally from Southern California. I never ever thought I would leave, but here I am in Florida. But I did spend a number of years working at both the elementary, middle school, and K-8 levels as a school counselor in Orange County. So I'm happy to be here, and we'll actually get into some introductions here in just a minute. So let me make sure my screen will share. Yay, we're starting with no tech challenges. Welcome everyone to our presentation on school reentry for school counselors, elementary edition. And so one of the things that we decided was really important was that we were attending to your needs. And so as a elementary school counselor, you have unique needs that are perhaps different from some of your colleagues that are at the secondary level. So we did want to make sure that we are addressing your needs. We encourage you to use the chat function throughout, and my colleague Lucy will be managing the chat as well during this time. So do feel free to use that. So to give you an idea of what we're hoping to accomplish in our time together, which I promise will probably fly right by because there's never enough time, we are going to talk about what are some of the current challenges as you all return to school and onto your campuses. And then we also want to leave you with what are 3 really important must-dos, but as well as maybe what are 3 things that maybe you shouldn't do or you should refrain from, or maybe it's holding off on them. So maybe it's not forgetting them for forever, but maybe for not right now. And then we'll talk a little bit about next steps, action steps for you as you return to your school. And of course, we would be remiss to not also bring up the notion of self-care. So let's go ahead and get started here. I saw that there was already some introductions in the chat, so that's great. If you haven't introduced yourself, I'd love to know what school district people are serving and what your role is. I absolutely love that this is open not just to school counselors, but also to school administrators. I think it's critically important to be able to have that collaboration and that partnership. And I've been fortunate to serve in schools where I had excellent administrator collaboration. And I've also had schools where I've had less than stellar administrator collaboration. So I'm excited to have all of you here as well. I saw there were some graduate level, graduate student interns, some directors. I love seeing everyone that's here. So thank you for being here and for your work in supporting students and wanting to do what is truly best for them. So let's go ahead and get started with learning a little bit more about our audience. If we could go ahead, we would like to get started with a quick poll here if possible. So on your screen, you should see the question. We would love to know, how prepared do you feel for returning to school campus? We're school counselors, we love a quick solution-focused scaling question 1 to 5 here. How are you feeling? How prepared are you? We'll give about 20 seconds or so for people to respond. Okay, maybe about 5 more seconds or so. And Lucy, you want to go ahead and end the poll and share out with how our attendees are feeling?
Yes, can you all see the poll results? So it looks like most participants here today are somewhat prepared, so that makes me feel good to hear that. But we also have a close second, slightly prepared. So we hope that at the end of today's presentation, you feel somewhat prepared and even more prepared after we share some of the information that we're presenting today. All right.
The poll. Oh, there it is. Thank you.
You can see it? All right.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and stop sharing our results here. Thank you for indulging in this for us. We really want to know where you are at and where we can build upon from there. So you want to go ahead, Lucy, and introduce yourself?
Hello, everyone. I am Lucy Dorless, and I wanted to start off by welcoming you all. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. So like many of you, I am an elementary school counselor as well. I am in Orange County, Florida, which is like the Orlando area. This is my 6th year in school counseling. Prior to becoming a school counselor, I was a middle school teacher for 9 years. And I was actually approached by my counselor, one of my school counselors at the time, who thought I would be a good fit for a school counseling position at the school. So she kind of encouraged me and mentored me through the process. So I became a school counselor, and I absolutely love the job. My caseload has been average 750 students. The most I've ever had on my caseload is about 810 students in Florida, at least in Broward County where I was working. Most elementary schools have one school counselor, so I've always worked on my own island by myself. And another thing about me is that I am currently a FSCA board member, Florida School Counselor Association board member. That's a little bit about me.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Lucy. And actually, Lucy and I have had the opportunity to work together. I also formerly served as a board member for the Florida School Counselors Association. So a little bit about me. Like I mentioned, I am a former school counselor from Southern California. A little bit about my story. Someone said, yikes, 700-800. I think I got Lucy beat here. My average caseload was about 1,200 students each year annually, because I was also split between two schools. So every other day I was at the alternating school. And even though they were only 0.7 of a mile apart, they were dramatically different in terms of what the student needs and just the overall school and community needs were, less than a mile away. I also was the first school counselor at both of my schools. Prior to me being there was not such a position.
Have a meeting.
So I came into a place of having no support, but really no infrastructure in there. There clearly wasn't a comprehensive school counseling program in place, but I didn't even have a job description. In fact, I'd never had an evaluation until I simply handed one to my administration. So I really was starting from ground zero as a school counselor. And interestingly, I was I think it was the second president, if I remember correctly, of the Orange County chapter of the California Association of School Counselors. So I eat, breathe, live, sleep, and now teach school counseling at Florida International University. So absolutely, I feel many of you being at an elementary school or multiple elementary schools. We're going to talk a little bit about that as Are you able to hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Some of the challenges that you may face in returning to school, some of these you may be aware of, and other things you may have not necessarily thought of yet. But probably the most important, and again, why I wanted to hit on this is number one, is that there's going to be feelings of disconnection and isolation amongst both your students as well as your staff. And in addition to that, they're also going to possibly feel overwhelmed and nervous. And so you really want to be thinking about how are you going to focus on building those connections again? And it may be doing so in a different way than you've done in the past. You may know pre-pandemic that you've had a really cohesive faculty. That doesn't necessarily mean that's going to be what you return to a school with that same cohesive faculty. And so, these are some of the things to consider. What is it that students need to feel more connected? What is it that the staff needs to feel more connected as well? A second challenge is we're going to return to the school setting, and the academic progress that our students make, or the lack thereof in terms of academic progress, is going to be difficult to ascertain. You won't necessarily know what is the really current level of academic functioning for many of our students. Some of you, I know the challenges with even having remote learning be successful, but how do we even know where our current stance is with them? So definitely figuring out how you are going to gauge academic progress and how you move forward from that point towards the rest of the academic year and even into the new school year will be important. A third challenge, and I think it's something really important to remember, is that no one has all of the answers. No one, and no one has all of the necessary information. It really is still such a fluid situation, even for us in Florida, where we've been back in school for quite some time at this point. We've been back in school, but that doesn't mean we have all of the answers either. Oftentimes we find ourselves, I know Lucy and I have talked about this before, we have found ourselves in a situation of having to have some acceptance for you're making the best decision that you can make with the given information that you have at this very moment, and being okay with that decision, not thinking about the coulda, woulda, shoulda, or if I would have known this, I would have done something different. That's not really going to help you in trying to move forward and bring everyone back together. Another, I think, challenge is that you can't simply return to status quo. You're going to have to build new systems and protocols for your school operations and even just simply communications. And so that can be a challenge, is what does that look like? And that already looks different for every single school. Some people have text messaging systems, some are very good with email, some are using social media. So it's going to look different for every school, but you do need to spend some time. School counselors and administrators can come together and have those conversations about what will be those systems that we need to put into place to convey the information, changes that are inevitable. How is that going to happen? Those conversations will be really important amongst your administrative team and yourself. And then for me, I think a really important thing is the challenges there that you are at risk as a school counselor of being utilized in non-counseling responsibilities. And so I'm so thrilled to hear that there are administrators that are here that can also hear this message, that school counselors are a minority on your campus. I know that I know that personally. I see it in the chat here. They're already a minority population, but school counselors need to be utilized for the skills that they have. And the skills that school counselors have, as you all know, are really important right now. There's probably never been a more important time to have that school counselor on your campus. And so really, we're going to talk a little bit later about how you need to preserve those counseling responsibilities and preserve the time an opportunity for counselors to be doing the critical and important work that they're qualified to do and that they can be doing and that they desire to be doing. So I wanted to show a couple of visuals just to kind of, give you kind of the landscape. And I will note and say that these are from the fall, so I would love for the research to be done again. But there was a poll that was looking at students before the pandemic and then currently. And again, by currently, I mean, I think it was about November that this was done. So you can see where were students reporting in terms of how they felt about their academics. Were they doing well, they were doing okay, or were they struggling? And you can see a dramatic difference between the percentage that was doing well before the pandemic and then currently. And then also looking at the difference with the percentage of students who identified that they were struggling. So, and if I was to make an educated guess right now, I would say that the number that are struggling has only continued to rise, even in recent months. And there's a number of reasons for that too, which we'll talk about. But I think it's important to be thinking about students are able to tell you if you ask them. And so that's one of the things that we do encourage is that you are involving students in your school reentry process, not just making the adult decisions, but also asking for the feedback of students as well. When it comes to looking at this with among our various populations, while we could say that most students maybe are by and large doing okay, and again, that's still very subjective of okay, we also know that our Black and Hispanic Latinx students are the ones that really are struggling the most. There's no way around it of saying that the social inequities are only being exacerbated by the pandemic that we are currently in. So really looking at your population and thinking about what are your school and community needs. Who is it that you are serving and how can you best go about moving the pendulum, maybe starting with those who are struggling and at least getting them from struggling to doing okay. Then we can kind of triage it and maybe later on we can get to those that are doing okay and try to advance them to be doing well. And then the last thing I wanted to share just in terms of landscape is not just with students, but the adults. So 4 in every 10 adults know someone who either has gotten sick or has suffered financial hardship. And again, I would say this probably has increased just since the end of 2020. But the percentage that we have who are being impacted in some way or another, whether it's medical and health related, or if it's financial, or just simply the overall stability and mental health that's surrounding all of the individuals in our communities. I think that these are some of the things that are going to have long lasting impacts. And so we really do need to re-enter into schools thinking about the fact that these are not things that are going to go away or are going to be easily addressed, within a week, a month, or even 2 for that matter. So I'm going to turn this over to Lucy, and she's going to share with us some of her best practices, lessons learned, and things that now that she's been back to, I don't know, how many months have you been back, Lucy?
So we've been back since August of last year. So in Orange County, the district where I currently work in, our parents had the option of either sending their students back to school face-to-face, or students can learn from home. So when we returned in August, I would say that we were at about a 50-50. Most 50% of our students returned, and we still had 50% still learning from home. So as things got safer, more and more students have returned to school. So now we're probably, I would say, we have about 600 students on campus, and we have just about a little over 100 students who are still learning from home. And we have 9 more weeks to go before the summer. So I wanted to share with you guys today some of the things that I've used this school year that have been very helpful. And I want you to just keep this in mind. I took time during the summer of last year to create a lot of these things, so that way when I return, I still wanted to have my counseling program in place, but I went in with an open mind, knowing that my role would look somewhat different this school year. So one of the things that I created right away was a virtual office. Dr. Logan, can you click on that for me? And I use my virtual office for a lot of things, where students and teachers alike, even parents, can go to my virtual office. We'll let it load here so you can see what are some of the things I have there. So it's just a place where students can come and visit and access. If they need to speak to me or request to meet with me, they can do that on their own without having to go through the teacher. So it's Women's History Month in March. So of course I included some resources for Women's History Month. I have some books on there, read alouds for test anxiety. And if students wanted to meet with me, all they would have to do is click on me on this in my virtual office, and it will automatically populate a I want to see the school counselor form. I've also included a check-in form when students click on the stop check-in here. I don't want students to just check in with me when they're, when they need to talk to me because they're having a hard day. I encourage students to just check in with me, to just let me know how you're doing. So there are times where students who are learning from home may send me messages like, I miss you. I just wanted to let you know that I won my baseball game last night. So it's that way I'm still connecting with them, even though they're not necessarily on campus. So if you go to the second slide, Dr. Logan, I have my virtual comm room. So this is, I know a lot of students spend time on this slide because there are a lot of activities there. When they click on almost every object on this slide, there's something to do. There is virtual coloring books. There is puzzles that the students like to use puzzles as a way to calm down. I love the Calm app. That's one of my favorite apps to use. Where students can reflect on their behavior. There's a grounding poster there, as you can see. So there are a lot of things that the students can engage in with, as well as if they click on the iPad. I found that a lot of students like watching animals live. So currently the students can click on the iPad and view the animals at the San Diego Zoo. For a while, I had the Georgia Aquarium, and my students provide me with feedback. They're like, okay, we want to see something new. So I try to update this as much as possible. Maybe every other month, I include different puzzles or coloring sheets so that students just have an area where they can go and calm down. So the students who are at school can come to my office, but I just wanted the students who are at home to have a place where they can also go and calm down if needed. And then on the next slide there, I have my growth mindset room where again, there are posters motivating students to have a growth mindset. When I meet with students or when I visit classrooms for classroom lessons, I like to do this chant with them just to know that, hey, if math is hard for you now, you'll learn your multiplication facts. You don't know it yet, but you'll learn them. So I love for them to have that mindset of just believing in themselves. I do a lot of motivational quotes and affirmations. So this is just an office where students can go and roam and explore, and as well as communicate with me if they need to. So I created this slide for my teachers. This is a place where my teachers can go. Ideally, this was supposed to be like the wellness room for my teachers, but I have a district mental health counselor that comes in on Fridays, and she created a similar room. So I've directed my teachers to go on her page because I didn't want to have just two of the same kind of resources. So that slide in reality should have been taken off, but teachers too also have a place where they can go and relax and unwind and reset. So that's my virtual comm room. One of the other things that I've used, because I have a lot of resources that I've used, is my needs assessment. When I returned, I needed to know what were the needs of my students or my school. This is my second year at the school that I'm at right now. And most of the teachers who work there have been there for a number of years. So they know the history of the school, they know the behaviors. So I typically at the beginning of the school year send out the link or QR code and have teachers complete my needs assessment. If you can click on the link, Dr. Logan, so you guys can see. So this is what it looks like. It's very short, to the point. What is your position? What kinds of counseling, small groups would students benefit from? Then I have what kind of classroom lessons would students benefit from? If you continue. School-wide initiatives that teachers wanted to see. And of course, in our district, teachers are required to complete an SDL training. So that was important to know that all teachers had completed that training. And of course, I like to gather information from my teachers on feedback. I like feedback. So if there's something that I can do to better assist my students and my teachers, their feedback is important to me. So usually once teachers complete this needs assessment, I then go over the data with them. I present the data, I send it out to the staff, and the staff tells me, and they see that, okay, these are the things that we want to see at our school, and this is how I'm gonna roll it out. I will either roll it out through small groups or classroom lessons or school-wide initiatives. Another item that I absolutely love is my minute meetings. This is where I meet with students individually. And what that entails is meeting with them individually right outside of their classroom. I set up a time to meet with the students. And so far, I've conducted over 610-minute meetings. And if you click on the link, you can see the questions that I asked the students. I go in the classroom and I introduce myself and say, okay, boys and girls, today I'm going to be conducting minute meetings. And I talk about who I am as a school counselor. And then I ask questions like, how are you feeling today? How is school going for you so far? Do you know what you want to be when you grow up? How many friends do you have? Do you know who I am? Because there are times if students were new to the school and they didn't know who I was, it was an opportunity for me to go over my role with that student. I also wanted to know if those who were learning from home, do they know how to access my virtual office? It was also important for me to know that students had a safe adult. I wanted to know if they had a safe adult or needed someone or had someone that, or needed, I'm sorry, I'm trying to remember what I was to say. Let me just read it. I asked them if they had a safe adult, if they ever needed help or had a big problem, was there an adult that they can talk to? And if a student indicated that they did not have a safe adult, by default, I was their safe adult and reminded them that they can always come to me if they ever had a problem. I also made sure I notated who their safe adult was and also let those adults know that this child indicated that you are their safe adult. And of course, I allowed them to tell me if they had anything they wanted to share with me, whether it was good or bad. And of course, the last few questions there for me, I can just, that was for me to note if they were learning face-to-face or from home and who their teacher was. So this gave me an opportunity to see, okay, if a student indicated that they were angry or upset and had no friends, I would go back and follow up with that student. That student now became a student that I would check in with and constantly monitor. And some students who indicated they had no friends, that was because it was their choice, not because they were loners and couldn't make friends. But again, this allowed me to gauge where my students, my staff, and these tools were very resourceful. On the last slide of this presentation, I have a link where you can access the forms. And so you guys have yeah, there he goes right there. So you'll be able to access this on the last slide where I provided the examples of some of the tools that I'm using. My favorite tool as well is Doodle. I don't know if you all are familiar with Doodle. This is where I am able to schedule meetings with or schedule classroom lessons with teachers. So during the weekends, I send out an email to my teachers saying that these are my available times next week. I'd like to come into your room. What times work for you? And if the time is not there, I work something out with the teacher where I'm able to come in and meet with their students. So now I'm doing lessons on test anxiety because our students are getting ready for state testing. And
A quick thing to jump in here real quick, Lucy, too, is would you mind just walking us through? So from the points that you provided the needs assessments to the teachers and staff, and then you had these student minute meetings, how did this then kind of translate into like your check-in process?
My check-in process? Okay, so I did my needs assessment. I mean, this took about a month, I would say, to get everything going, because we know that when teachers return, they need to establish those rules and norms. I didn't want to jump in right away. So I did the needs assessment, and within a week, I was able to get most of my teachers to participate. So I had that data, and I wanted to use that data to kind of drive my counseling program. From there, I used Doodle. I started with kindergarten and I always work my way up. 1 week I do all of kindergarten. I ask teachers to come in, and my first lesson of the year is to come in and introduce myself and talk about my role as a school counselor and what does that mean. And I do that from grades pre-K to 5th. And then my second lesson, I come around, I did the minute meetings, which took more time because things happen throughout the day. So my minute meetings took about 3 months to complete, but I got most of them done. I think I'm missing new students that I have to kind of check in with. But from there, the data that I gathered from the minute meetings allowed me to kind of to pinpoint, okay, these are the students that I need to check in with. And I made sure I had a conversation with the teacher, like, hey, this student indicated that, sometimes they feel sad. Can you let me know if there are any issues in class? And if it warranted for me to reach out to the parent and recommend individual counseling, I did that at that time. I don't know if I answered the question, but I hope I did. You're muted.
Yeah, I think it's helpful to be able to hear kind of how you walk through the process of it too. And it is a process. It's going to take time. And I think that's, something that kind of permeates throughout our presentation today too, is that all of this takes time. And so you may feel a sense of urgency, but at the same time, it's going to take time for you to make connections. And that's a feat to get through 600 plus students for these minute meetings. Now, if I remember correctly, the way that you did these was that you kind of camped yourself just outside of that classroom. So if it was Miss Jones' classroom, you went and kind of gave the heads up, hey, I'm going to be meeting for, I'll be doing these minute meetings. And then that you pulled them out, let's just say into the hallway or something like that. Is that correct?
Yes. I go in and just kind of give my spiel and say, hey, I'm here to meet with you all, just to check in with you and see how you're doing. And I'm going to call you one by one. And it was just fluid in and out.
Okay. Good. So then from there, so once you now have kind of identified, you have some idea about what the needs are of the teachers and what's going on in their classrooms and what they're giving you as feedback. You've now heard from students, and I see on here you also have a parent survey. Now, based upon those results, how then did you decide how to check in with students? Like beyond your minute meetings, how did you then kind of prioritize how did this relate to your direct services that you were providing?
So I do morning duty right at the car loop. So this is an opportunity for me to check in with so many students. I can kind of gauge who's having a good day or a bad day. I know some parents have recommended or have reached out to me for counseling. I have teachers who have made referrals. I also have like a referral form where teachers who may believe that this student may benefit from counseling. And of course, they have to go through that form, and I kind of go through it and make sure that, there's sometimes teachers just believe that a student needs counseling when it's just a conversation, but not necessarily counseling. So kind of go through, filter through that. And from there, I decide, if I need to meet with the student individually. Sometimes in certain grades, there's an issue with a group of girls. I may need to create a friendship group. So it all comes from most of it comes from the teachers. There are times where children have reached out to me on their own and said that I need to meet with you because I recognize I have anger issues. And of course, I explained to them that I have to call the parent, and that the parent is on board. And then I send out a consent form, and then I begin to meet with that student.
Do you want to also address, I know there were some questions in the chat about how was this an individual thing that you did with each of the students for the minute meetings? Did you do the whole class? Like, what did that look like?
It was an individual thing. So I go in right away. I go in and the teachers know I schedule these meetings through Doodle. So if I'm coming to Dr. Logan's class, beforehand that I'm coming. Once I arrive to the class, I introduce myself and say, today I'm going to be meeting with you guys one-on-one. And this meeting is just to check in with you and see how you're doing. At that time, I asked the teachers to provide me with a roster. So that way, when children are coming in and out, I kind of go ahead and type in their name and their grade and teacher information. So when they come out, I'm checking them off. So if I'm meeting with Sandy first, I'm like, thank you. It was so nice meeting with you, Sandy. Could you go get Johnny? And then usually that takes, depending my primary students, it took about 45 minutes. But for my intermediate students, it was like 15 to 20 minutes because they're older and they can answer those questions faster than the younger ones, because sometimes they want to share your life story. They want to share their life story.
Yes. And then another question too, just kind of before we address some of these other amazing things that you're doing at your school, Jose had an excellent question about how did you make your students and teachers and parents and caregivers aware of your virtual office? Is there, did you make videos? Did you give a presentation? How did you kind of share out information and really publicize yourself?
So social media, I love social media, it's my best friend. And we have a school Class Dojo account. So everything goes through Class Dojo. So we have a parent liaison who puts out all the information. And if there's anything I want to share with the parents as far as like my calendar or my newsletter or anything that I'm doing, I send it through her. She posted on our Class Dojo. She'll post it on the school website, Facebook page. And I also posted on my social media as well. So my newsletters have been very helpful. Social media, and I'm in the car loop as well. I know that for my parent survey, it was hard to get my parents to fill out the survey. So school ends at 3 o'clock for me, but there are parents who start lining up in the car line at 1:30. So what I did was created a QR code and put it on a clipboard, and I went through the car line and I was like, hey, did you get a chance to do my survey yet? If not, please go ahead and scan this right now. So it was, I'm very persistent. So just getting it out there and letting them know that, hey, this is available. We also do something called our monthly chat and chew, where the behavior specialist, the parent liaison, and I meet with parents, and we go over topics like, for instance, we did how to create a calm corner at home. We talked about test anxiety. We talked about mental health resources, behavior. So parents can talk to us in an intimate setting where they kind of log on to what's our version of the Zoom program, and we provide resources to them. So we find ways to reach out to the parent. Like after my morning duty, I like to go to the front office and see who my students who are coming in late. If there's an opportunity to talk to the parent, I do that and say, is there a reason why I noticed that she's coming in late? How can we help you? So just making myself present and trying to get in contact with as many parents as possible.
I love how you're talking to Lucy about the importance of visibility. Everything that you've been describing is illustrating your visibility and really supporting your role as a school counselor and how you're supporting all of your stakeholders, from the students to the teachers, but parents and caregivers. And yes, we love technology. Lucy and I could talk about technology as its own topic all day long. So are there any other tools? I know you've mentioned Doodle and using QR codes and just kind of social media in general. Do you want to talk a little bit about like Google and Microsoft and just kind of where your tools kind of exist within there?
Okay, so I like Google as well. I love Google. I use Google for just about everything. So I create a lot of my forms from the Google. I use Google Voice. I know that for me, it was important for me to communicate with parents. And if I couldn't get a hold of them, I know a lot of times teachers or educators don't want to use their personal cell phone to reach out to parents or send them messages if they can't get a hold of them. Google Voice makes it possible for me to make calls and even send text messages to parents. I use the Google Slides for my presentations. I use Google Slide to create my virtual office. I use Google Sheets, I think that's what it's called, to track the students who are coming to me. So if a student came to me because they were just having a meltdown and they came to my office for a few minutes just to relax, to calm down, I make sure that I'm tracking how many students I am seeing on a daily basis. And then at the end of the year, I like to present that data to my administrators to say, all right, I service X amount of students. These are the number of classroom lessons I've done, number of individual counseling sessions I've done. So Google is a good resource to use. I use Microsoft Teams to meet with students to have virtual individual counseling sessions. As I mentioned, some of my students are still learning from home, and I do have a few students who I meet with individually. So I'm able to use Microsoft Teams. So I'm meeting with those students because I love the video feature of Microsoft Teams. Let's see what else I'm using. Social media. I like my iPhone. I don't know if any of you guys have iPhones. Most people do. The iPhone Notes app. This is how I track. I have a list of all of the students that I need to check in with, and I kind of check them off throughout the week to make sure that I'm getting to every student that I need to see.
And one more thing I want to address on here before we get to like what we think are, again, we're biased, but what your 3 must-dos should be at your school. Do you want to expand on how you're connecting with staff? I think you've got your Mindful Mondays and Wellness Wednesdays.
So I'm connecting with staff. One of the things that I do on Mondays is my Mindful Mondays. That's for the school, my teachers, the students, the parents. Sometimes it's retweeted by the district, where I go on Mondays and kind of do like a 1 minute to 2 minute video, kind of like a preview for the week. And when we do like a 1 minute mindfulness activity. I do Wellness Wednesdays. This is where I check in with teachers and just see how they're doing. And if there's anything I can do to support them or support their students. I've also provided the link for that on my resource page. This is a way where I sometimes just walk by and make myself available. I mean, I can't sub for you, but if you need 10 minutes, a 10-minute break, or maybe a 15-minute break, I'm okay with going in to relieve a teacher for that time. So I let the teachers, and I like doing, putting notes in the teachers' mailboxes. I like to do handwritten notes for them just to remind them that we're in this together. I support you. What can I do to help you? Because you know what? We put a lot of emphasis on, making sure that our students are okay, but a lot of our teachers are struggling too. And I like to remind my staff that I am not just the school counselor for the students, but I'm your school counselor too. Just know that my space, my office is a safe place for you. And most of them call my office the Zen room. So even when I'm not in my office, my teachers will come in and just sit because they want to sit on the yoga mat, they want to listen to calming music, they can do that. So I open my space to them so they can have a safe place at school where they just want to go and just sit quietly, they can do that.
Okay, so let's get to what we believe are the 3 must-dos. And again, these are kind of really broad things, and we'll kind of talk about some specifics with them, but our 3 must-dos, Lucy.
All right, so for me, when I got back, the first thing I wanted to do is it was important for me to know where my students were. I needed to know that all of my students were accounted for. How did I do that? I created a Google form. Again, Google is my best friend. I created a Google form where I emailed the link to my teachers the first week when we returned to find out who has been missing in action. I mean, we were about 100 students that were unaccounted for. We didn't know where they were. We just knew that we were missing 100 students and we needed to find where they were. So I created that form to gather that information where teachers had to send in complete the form, and then I had a spreadsheet and we needed to get to work. I worked with the attendance clerk, and we refer to them here as the registrar, and my school social worker, where we kind of divvied up the work and we started making calls to figure out where these students were. Now, some of our students we found out moved away. Some of them had transferred to other schools. Some of them had transitioned to virtual school. So for me, it was important for me to know where my students were. I also had to drive and find some students because we had numbers that were disconnected. So my SRO and I, which is our school resource officer, we went for a trip to look for certain students. And we found out that some of them had moved because the landlord was there and said they no longer live here. So we at least had an idea where they were. We had to call some employers to find out where the parents were because they had listed their employer's number on their child's emergency contact form. So we needed to know where they were. So I think it's important, I consider my children, my students, I always say my children, but my students like my babies, and I want to know that they're okay. Even, it was so important. It gave me anxiety if I didn't know where they were.
I just want to jump in too, because I know you had shared with us too, Lucy, in terms of tracking students, when you are having that needs assessment be completed by the parents and caregivers, ask for their phone number there too. You may have it in the school system. It may not be valid anymore. It may not be updated. So if you are getting someone to complete that needs assessment from the parents and caregivers in real time, they're going to give you the phone number that's relevant for them right then. So you're spending less kind of time spinning your wheels trying to track down the right phone number and get a hold of someone if that phone's been disconnected. So you found that to be very helpful as well.
Yes, thank you. That's good. I might go ahead and add that to my form. See, I'm always tweaking my form, so that's good information. Thank you. The next must do is a needs assessment. Your needs assessment is sort of the vehicle that drives your comprehensive school counseling program. We are school counselors first, so we want to make sure that we are addressing the needs of our school, our students. So it was important for me to have that needs assessment data and then share it out to my staff and say, okay, this is what we need and this is how I'm going to provide it. So that information really helped me create my small groups, plan for my classroom lessons and school-wide initiatives. And then the information that I gathered from the parent survey also gave me insight on what I needed to do for my monthly chat and choose. Next, prepare to be flexible. Plan to be flexible because I know I'm a person who likes to follow my schedule. I create a schedule, a daily schedule, and I say I need to complete these things by the end of the day. Well, in reality, get back to school, things don't always go as planned, right? So it's so important to be flexible and responsive to the needs of your school. Make sure there's consistent communication with all stakeholders. Collaboration is key. But also remember your role. And I say that because I am flexible and I am a team player, but we just don't have the bodies at my school to do everything. So this year, I've been asked to cover someone's lunch 3 days out of the week. And for me, that was not okay. So I wanted to still be a team player. So I said, well, I can't cover your lunch 3 days, but I could do one day. Such is the case with testing, because we have so many students who have small group testing and have accommodations. And at one point, they wanted me to test my ESC students who have all day to test. And I told the testing coordinator, I'm flexible and I want to help, but can I test a different group? So just be prepared to remember you're still a counselor first, but you also want to be a team player as well.
Thank you for sharing that point, because I think that's so important too, is that, you know, you have the skills and the ability to collaborate with your stakeholders and your staff on your campus, but not necessarily at the expense of not being able to do your role as well. You know, as Lucy kind of said, maybe 3 days a week isn't feasible, but you're not saying, no, I'm not going to do it. Instead, are you able to work with your administration and work with other key stakeholders to say, if I'm doing lunch duty, that also takes away time when I could be checking in with students, or I could be running small groups, or that could be the time when I do a parent ed workshop. So making sure that you are, again, also advocating for yourself in this time. We know that at the end of the day, your intentions are to support students and to support families. And so you need to be able to do that as well, sticking within what your role is. So I know as counselors, we want to be team players and we want to say yes all the time, but that's also not going to benefit our students if we say yes to everything as well. I think I put in the chat earlier, boundaries are important, always, particularly in this process. So how about on the flip side, maybe things that we would recommend, you know, refrain from doing?
Okay, so refrain from assuming that school is business as usual. It is different. And if I could be completely transparent with you, I was afraid. Like I knew I needed to go back, but then I knew my son who's still learning from home had health issues, and I was afraid. I didn't know if I could do this and go back and still be effective as a school counselor. But I went in with an open mind, and I want you guys to just know that it's not business as usual. When you return, allow the teachers to establish classroom norms and procedures, go over rules with their students, because it's different. You know, where I found myself in the hallway just monitoring students, making sure they were maintaining social distancing, making sure they had their mask on. It was different. And then it became our norm. But it's not business as usual, and just prepare to be flexible when you go back, and allow the teachers to establish those classroom norms before you want to go in and start doing lessons or what have you. Refrain from feeling that you or anyone have all the answers. Remember to give yourself grace. I know that everyone was kind of depending on me. We need you. Like my administrators were like, hey, I have a teacher who's having a meltdown. I need you to go see that teacher right now. All right. I was like running all over the place while there were still things happening. I still had to do threat assessments. I still had to go meet with students individually. I still had to do classroom lessons. So I didn't have all the answers for some of the questions my admin was asking me. I was like, please hold, let me go, make sure you use your resources. I reach out to my district leader all the time. If I don't know the answer, if I have a question, I reach out to them. The thing is, we're all learning. This is our new normal for right now, or temporarily new normal. I don't know when we're going to go back to not wearing a mask. I don't know, but right now in this moment, this is our new normal. And I encourage you just to give yourself grace. We're in this together, and you don't know it all, and that's okay. Just remember that it's okay. Lastly, things to refrain from doing is working in isolation. I know as elementary school counselors, most of us are the only ones at our school, and this is not the time to kind of work in isolation and do your own thing. Now it requires all hands on deck. So that might be that might require you to do temperature checks or morning and afternoon duty because they need you. I mean, we don't have the manpower at my school, so there are certain things that I'm okay with doing. I know that at the beginning of the school year, where during lunchtime it was busy, I went ahead and put on my gloves. I asked the lunch ladies, how can I help? So be there to provide assistance as needed. Not that it becomes your job entirely. You still remember your role as a school counselor, but be a team player. It's very important. So refrain from just doing your own thing and working in isolation or working solo.
I would also just add, as you look at these three things, which are pretty large as well, really think about how do you refrain from just getting back into that same place of, well, this is the way we've done things pre-pandemic or even for the last 5 years. Things can't be business as usual. So how can you be taking that leadership role, working with your administrators and other stakeholders to really be establishing what are those new norms, new rules, procedures, things that may be going on. Start with what exists at your school and really have those conversations that you need to have on the front end that can help you start to build in some of that infrastructure. So if you're at a school that is a PBIS school, start with what you already have there and decide where do we need to make some adjustments to that. Doesn't mean you have to throw your entire PBIS matrix, out the window. How do you use that as a starting point, and decide where do things maybe need to be modified, and then also being able to recognize that part of the business as usual, as you put things into place, some things may not go so swimmingly well. And so really being open to kind of that fluidity and that flexibility of saying, okay, well, we tried this for the last 2 weeks and here's some of the challenges that came with that. So here's how we can kind of revise or amend what that process may be. And absolutely, the having all the answers, no one has all of the answers. It's kind of like parenting. There's no perfect parenting manual for what's going on. There's no perfect manual for what pandemic learning looks like and how we can best support everyone. We have some starting points, but no one knows kind of what all the answers are. And then really working in isolation. This is something I hear a lot of, even from my interns that are placed in schools, is that even if you're on the school campus, because the procedures, the protocol from a health and safety standpoint are changing, you may still feel isolated even if you're in that campus building. You may not be able to have everyone, all grades hanging out in the hallway at the same time anymore. Your bell schedule may look different. I mean, really some of these logistical things you want to think about. And then again, be open to the change that may come along with it. And one of the things I would say in kind of refraining from that isolation is try to think about the opposite of that pendulum, is working, with the village. Work with your village. You have some amazing support in California at the county offices of education. You have various networks, you have your professional organizations, and all of these are things to help prevent you in working in isolation. And again, learn from those that have come before you. Now, Lucy's been doing this for a number of months and she doesn't have all the answers and everything hasn't gone swimmingly well at her school, but she's made the adjustments to try over time as well. So one of the things that I wanted us to be able to do is to put people into small breakout groups just for a few minutes, maybe into small groups of about 5, so people actually have a chance to converse with one another. And I would love for you to think about and be able to identify one of the must-dos that you will return to your school committing to do. And then also be thinking about and brainstorming with your colleagues here about what are some of the barriers that you might need to consider, but also who are your allies that can support your efforts. And one of the things that I actually shared this with Lucy when we were preparing for this presentation is when it comes to your allies, I use a signal system. So red, yellow, green. So who are those people that avidly support you like no other? Those are your green lights. Like they're going to give you the green light and they're good to go. They support you. They support the school counseling program. Those are your green lights. Start with being able to identify some of those allies. Then you have your yellow dots or your yellow lights. And those are the ones that are like, maybe proceed with caution. Maybe they don't know enough about what the school counselor does, but you have some progress you can make with them. And then you have those that are your red lights. You know, I had some of these at one of my schools that, you know, teachers said, don't ever think you're pulling a student out of my class. And I thought, okay, well, we're going to have a great collaborative relationship. You're a red dot. So really start with the allies that you can. Who's going to support your efforts? And as we get into these small breakout rooms, I'm just going to go back for a second to the slide here so you all can look again, those 3 must-dos. So when you think about which of these in your small groups can you talk about, how can you commit to one of these? Can you commit to coming up with your system, whatever that may be, of tracking students and just kind of their progress and engaging where they're at? Can you commit to a needs assessment for those variety of stakeholders, your students themselves, the teachers, the parents and caregivers? Or can you commit to flexibility and collaboration, but not at the expense of your role and your critical role as a school counselor? So is it possible for us to go ahead and put everyone into a breakout room, maybe just for about 10 minutes or so, about 5 people in each group, and then we can come back. And I'd love to hear what are some of the ideas that people have come up with that are feasible for your school setting.
Yes, we're doing that right now.
Beautiful. Okay, we'll take about 10 minutes.
Okay, I see some folks that are not in breakouts just yet. If there's an issue, folks, let us know. Otherwise, you should have been assigned to one of the breakouts. Oh, sorry, Julie. Jamina, it looks like Julie Bella was sent to a breakout room and clicked on it, but it brought her back here.
Okay, I'm gonna move her right now.
Thank you.
I'm not sure why the other ones aren't joining.
I'm not sure.
I put them all in rooms already.
All right. Has it been 10 minutes
No,
already? Okay.
it's been about 4.
Okay.
As always, time flies by, so we'll be kind of whipping through these last few slides here.
I'm trying to go through the chat here. Make sure I didn't miss anything.
I'm gonna close them at 2:17. Okay, Sandy?
Perfect. Thank you for giving them the reminder too.
You're welcome.
Okay, it looks like we are starting to get everyone returning from your small breakout groups. I do hope that you were able to have a chance to connect. I love that there's people from all over Southern California that are here and that you were able to connect and maybe get some ideas and also share the ideas that you've come up with for yourself. Very quickly, I just wanted to share on the screen here a couple of takeaways that we do hope for everyone that's here this afternoon. Number one, and I think this is probably one of the most important, is that collaboration and communication are key as you enter back into the schools. Really being intentional and thinking about what does collaboration need to look like and what communications are really necessary through whatever means that those may be. We also think it's important to have an I can, I will mindset. So I can do this or I will do this in these ways. So not just necessarily a blanket yes. Yes, I want to help, but being very intentional with the mindset that you are operating with. And really operate with that sense of establishing new norms and not just embracing the status quo, because the status quo is not necessarily going to work for the environment and the circumstances that you're all returning into. And then number 4, you can't do all of the things. None of us can. And so really give yourself and others grace to be doing what is feasible, what is possible for you, because it can't be everything and you can't be everything to everyone as much as we would love for that to be the case. And then importantly, as you are working in your collaborative efforts with your stakeholders, remember that student well-being should be at the forefront of all that you do. So when we are sitting down with administration and other key stakeholders, are we making decisions that at the forefront, we are thinking about what is in the best interest of students? Now, something that I really appreciated when I have attended various professional and development opportunities in the past is having some kind of commitment or follow-up. So I have a little note at the bottom of the screen here to send yourself an email right now about the commitments that you were just talking about in your small groups. Just open up an email, even if it's a draft, or send it to yourself, but just very briefly jot down what is it that you were willing to commit to. And this can give you a reminder of what it is that you are willing to commit to. And maybe it's really just the seed right now. You're planting the seed with yourself of what you're going to return to your school and try to accomplish upon your return. So whatever that level of commitment could be, something that's very large that you already have in your head, or even just a small step towards one of those must-do things, send yourself that email of your commitment. Now, I'm going to let Lucy very quickly talk about a couple of aspects of self-care.
All right. I always remind my staff, my students, even my students, to remember to practice self-care. It is so important to build time in your schedule to do that. I recently, this school year, started taking a break every day. I was that person who was such a workaholic, would not take a lunch. Sometimes I would have to remind myself, go use the restroom. You have one in your office. So remembering to just build time in your schedule for you, for some breathers. Make sure you're doing things professionally and personally that bring you joy. I'm doing that now. Self-care has become so important to me because I don't want to burn out. Because if I'm not doing well, I can't be the best mom or school counselor to my students. So I do a lot of things that bring me joy, and I think that it's the perfect balance for me with my personal life and work life. Tend to your personal needs, such as fitness, nutrition, personal relationship, hobbies, music. Remember to take care of yourselves.
And this is something that I recognize as counselors, we've been trained. We know these things, but we also need the reminders too. We need the reminders of, yes, I do need to go to the restroom. Yes, I need to take a break. I'm one, I don't know if you're like me, but I'm one of those people that I like to, get as much done as I can in the next 5 hours. I've had to kind of break that a little bit to say, yeah, well, it might take me 5 hours and 30 minutes now to accomplish something, but I need to give myself some breaks in between there. I can't function in the same capacity, even if I liked it. I can't, and we all can't. We can't function in that same way. So we want to make sure that we had some time at the end here for what questions that you may have as you think about returning to school. How can we be of assistance and support your reentry process? And the last thing I wanted to share with you here, and we'll get to some of those questions, are there are 3 resources that I wanted to point out to everyone. And one of them was actually kind of mentioned at the beginning this afternoon for this afternoon's PD. ASCA has a number of virtual school counseling resources. And on their page, they have it broken down by things that are virtual school counseling for the elementary level, specifically virtual school counseling for middle school and high school level. So there are some guiding documents, and that may be really helpful for you to get some of those conversations started with your school administration. So that might serve as a really great starting point for you. The second one that's on here is Planning for Uncertainty, an educator's guide to navigating the COVID-19 era. And this one actually comes from Panorama. Actually, no, I'm sorry. This one comes from Penn State University, and they put together this guiding document. And really, they highlight 3 main things. Dialogue with your stakeholders. Again, that communication and collaboration is critical. 2, consider your school environment. You know your school environment best pre-pandemic. You need to now get to know what is your school climate currently in the pandemic. And then 3, apply an equity lens. As I mentioned earlier, we know that there are critical issues of equity and access that are coming into play with our students learning or lack thereof. And then 3rd resource is from Panorama, if any of you are using that online system for SEL assessment and engagement. The role of SEL in reintegrating in-person learning. They give you 6 tenets to guide your transition. And I won't go through all 3 of them, but all of these are hyperlinked for you and will take you directly to the website or the document or resource that we have identified here for you. And again, I encourage you to use these resources as a way for you to start having those courageous conversations that you need to have with your school administration and with your staff as well. So I'm going to leave our information up here and then just see what questions do people have with our last minute or 2 here.
I think
Thank you so much, Sandy. Sorry, Lucy. As folks kind of get on there for the question, I want to just take a time while folks are still here to just thank you both so much for your just wealth of knowledge and resources and the way you shared them. Folks are just blowing up the chat, as you can see, just thanking you for giving us just hope and such a valuable resources I'm seeing right now. So thank you both so much off the bat. I know that one of the main chat questions I'm seeing is access to this information. I just want folks to know again that all of this presentation, the links, the document with the questions and answers, along with the recording of this, will be available to you on rcec.us and also via email when we send that out to you in the next few days. So you have it all there for you. Check it out as you see fit. And just wanted folks to know that we chose our presenters with intentionality behind it. We know that Florida is already ahead of the game in terms of going back to school. And so we wanted you to have that lens. And it doesn't matter the zip code, you know, we serve all students. And so we thought by bringing them out here, y'all could get some information that we can use, whether you go back in the next few weeks, whether you've been back for a week or so, whether you go back in August or September. The key is to be ready and stay proactive. So you don't have to jumble around and wait for you're being told to do something. You already have ideas ahead of time. And that's what makes us comprehensive in that one aspect. So hopefully you got some ideas going. And I don't know if we have some questions there. All right, let me go back to the chat and see to make sure we answer everyone's questions. I see a lot of thank yous. That's great. And you're all very welcome. I don't see. And folks, if you want to use the chat now or be brave and unmute yourselves, that's always good too. On day 4, it's going great. Good to hear, Jody. Good to hear.
I know I put this in the chat a moment ago, but I think it is important for everyone to remember too, you have the capacity and you're capable of having a successful re-entry. Will it be easy? No, probably not. But that doesn't mean that you don't still have the capacity to make it a worthwhile experience for yourself and for your staff and your students and families as well. So you are able to do this and utilize yourself and the other resources that you have. I know Lucia shared she couldn't do this alone at her school without collaboration either.
Absolutely.
I do see one question, and it has to do with needs assessments, and it says, how did you get needs assessments back from teachers? Can somebody answer that?
I think for me, it was, I've had a love-hate relationship with needs assessment with teachers, because sometimes your school counseling program and anything that you do is really based on those relationships, because that you need to get their buy-in. So for me, it was some teachers would do it right away. As soon as you sent the link, they were like on it. While others, it was like stopping them in the teacher lounge and say, hey, how are you today? Did you get an opportunity to do my needs assessment? And if not, I actually have it on my iPad right now. Can you take a moment? So I had to do that with some teachers. It's not 100%, so I don't want you guys to believe that I have buy-in from every single person at my school, but I have a lot of buy-in. So, and then it's also so great because my administrator is literally, she's my cheerleader, because if I go to her and I said, yeah, I did this needs assessment, I just need more data, she will go ahead and send out an email to the staff and say, if you didn't get a chance yet, please go ahead and complete Ms. Dorlis's needs assessment. And then all of a sudden you start to see more of them trickle in. So it's I think in my case, it's been important to have my administrators backing me, because I've been able to get a lot of things done, because they have said, they didn't do it for you, give me a second, let me send the staff an email. So
That's your green dot right there.
yes, my principal and AP are my green dots. They are.
Thank you. Any more questions, folks?
I do have a question for Lucy. You mentioned that one of your must-dos is to track students and that you use the form to figure out where your students are. And you mentioned that there were like 100 students that were unaccounted for.
Mhm.
Did you was like your only way to contact them, like, was it individually, like an individual process, or did you ever do any groups to try to get more back in, like, or was it just individual?
When you say individual, like as far as
Like
contacting
phone
them?
calls, yeah, like was it like just phone calls and that was it, or did you do any like type of attendance groups or anything like that?
Well, so that's we have, for attendance groups, we have something where if we have students who are late, not late, but who are always absent, we address that differently. But for the data that I got from the unaccounted form that I created, I just needed to know where those students were. So it was for that purpose, is tracking them and knowing where they were. But then I do meet with my, I guess her title is the registrar, and she tracks the attendance for us. So we have students who are just not coming to school, there's truancy there. We actually have meetings with the parent, the school social worker, the AP, and myself. So we're tracking those students that way. But for the purpose of just tracking where those students who were missing, that's what that form was for, was just for me to know where those students were. And just know that either they were no longer our students, they moved away, or they're now virtual school. I just needed to know where they were. I hope I answered your question.
I see a thumbs up.
Okay, yay.
Are there any more questions, folks? All righty, then on behalf of our team, I just want to say thank you again to our wonderful presenters, and thank you all out there in the virtual world, whether you are in Riverside County or not Riverside County, you're very welcome here, and we are family, and we just look forward to supporting you in the near future. So check us out when we do other events. You're all very much welcome. Have a great rest of your week and stay safe out there. And thank you for what you do for our students. Elementary counselors rock. You're amazing.
Take
Have a great day,
care,
everybody.
everyone.
Thank you.